Hey, did you hear that all hi-fi reviewers are immoral, soulless shills, puppeteered by the price-gouging snake oil industry? No? Oh, you want proof? Dude, they have gear on loan, completely for free. Obviously, that means that all reviewers are sick little polyps festering on the cancerous blob of hi-fi manufacturers. Welcome. In some corners of the internet, in some forums, and in some YouTube channels even, that seems to be like the consensus view of the state of hi-fi reviewing. Now, if that degree of crack pipe paranoia doesn't seem entirely tethered to reality, and you're not allergic to nuance, then maybe stick around and hear my take on all this. A reviewer needs a reference, a system that they are intimately familiar with and that they can go back to again and again to like recalibrate their impressions as they switch gear in and out of the system. A reviewer also needs components that can do justice to the ones under review, and also components that can highlight shortcomings or advantages of that product. And that kind of means they need more stuff than what is included in their reference system. Now, you should review a component together with other components that are commensurate with its performance, or like its price category at least. Because I don't think you would like necessarily trust a review of these speakers with like a Wim amp. Like, not shitting on Wim, it's incredible value as an amplifier, but it's just not in this category, right? But a reviewer isn't gonna buy amps commensurate with this level of performance on a reviewer's income necessarily. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. Now, some reviewers, many of them actually, have other lucrative careers and only review as a side gig or a passion project hobby thing, or have, inherited money or have had success in the past or have a wealthy partner or whatever. But not everyone is so lucky. So who should review stuff like this then? Is that only limited not just for consumers to the ones that are wealthy, but also reviewers have to be wealthy to even review them? Well, this is where I'll quote Alan Sercom, who's the editor of the magazine Hi-Fi Plus. And he says, "Frankly, I'm more concerned with getting the right person to do the job rather than the right shaped wallet." The solution then is to get that right person for the job some long-term loans so that they can have a reference that is outside of what they can afford as consumers. And in the best case scenario, long-term loans has a mutually beneficial effect. The reviewer gets to have reference components commensurate with the products under review, and they get to keep them longer term so they get even more familiar with them and can try them in different contexts. And the manufacturer of that component gets some free exposure. That component gets mentioned in every review that reviewer publishes. So yeah, that's like the best case, and I think in most cases we do get like the best case outcome. But it's not always like that. There are other nuances to this. For example, in a single review, any given component gets compared to maybe a couple other components, so your chances of coming out on top is greater. But if you are exposed to competition month after month for a very long time, you're going to lose eventually, at least on some parameter, and you'll do so quite publicly in the magazine or wherever the review is published. Now, what about the common accusation that long-term loans lead to these disqualifying biases? Well, I disagree, and I'll tell you why. I think the sort of inverse or the other option here is leading to at least as much bias, because it is like a human instinct to defend the things you've spent a lot of money on. And it is actually, you have more resistance to admitting that the thing you have bought with your own money is inferior to the product under review than to say that, well, this thing that I didn't pay for is inferior to this other thing that I didn't pay for. Like, you're more neutral when you don't own either of the two. But you don't hear that many complaints about that. You don't hear anyone saying reviewers shouldn't own equipment. Like, you don't hear anyone saying that, which leads me to think that these accusations around biases for loaners kind of reek of jealousy a little bit. But okay, what if a reviewer is told that, at the conclusion of the review, they can get to keep the component long term? Would that knowledge lead to some sort of bias because that situation happens? Well, would you want to keep it long term if it's not good? And would you alter your conclusion in the review knowing that that arrangement is looming? No, like, I wouldn't say something is better than it is just so that I can keep it if it isn't good. Like, where's the bias in that? I don't really understand the logic. But okay, maybe that's not the accusation. Let's say I have a component on long-term loan, and then I get in a different component from the same manufacturer for review, which is a plausible scenario because I would be familiar with the brand, familiar with their sound, familiar with maybe the product category already. Say I have one amplifier, I get in another amplifier from the same manufacturer. Would that lead to some sort of bias? Well, maybe, because I might have an inclination to like the new component, or I might think that I go in expecting that I would like the new component because I've agreed to a long-term loan of another component from that manufacturer, and I did so presumably because I like it. So there's an expectation bias going into the review. But it is also very plausible that I will actually genuinely truly like the new product because it's from the same manufacturer that did the thing that I have on long-term loan because I like it. So, like, if there is a bias in this, it's going to be really hard to prove. And you as a reader can go, well, this reviewer had their product already, so of course they like the new one. No surprises there, right? Like, you apply whatever amount of skepticism you want, as long as the reviewer is, transparent with this, that, I have a pre-existing sort of relationship, not financially, but in terms of a loaner with this company, and here's their new thing, and it's great. Like, as long as that's out in the open, it's up to you to, interpret what they're saying. Where there might also be a little bit of bias is if a manufacturer that I've lent you something might, expect a visit to their room at a hi-fi show, might expect that to be reported on in the magazine or publication, and maybe even expect some kinder words than you might have otherwise given them. And yeah, they might expect that, and they might relay that expectation in more or less subtle ways. And sometimes it's like really hard to detect, right? Like, sometimes the relationship might seem entirely cordial and above board and fine, but these sort of expectations might build up over time anyway, subconsciously. And you might, as a reviewer, have this sort of sense of guilt. Well, like, they sent me this stuff. I'll make sure to drop by their room and give them a mention. It's like a human instinct to be reciprocal in kindness in some way. And us reviewers have to be on our guard for that. Like, we have to observe our own actions and make sure we don't fall into those types of patterns. So yeah, there you might have some bias. Like, yeah, it might exist. I think primarily the issue is not necessarily actual bias in these regards, like affecting the outcome of reviews and affecting coverage. I think the bigger problem is the specter of bias, that people read into things or like project these things onto reviewers and publications in a way that makes them distrust them, even though there might not be any substance there. And the way to combat that is just more transparency, just cards on the table. This is my relationship with these manufacturers. This is what I own. This is what I have on loan. just put it out there and just not like make it clear that you're not trying to hide anything, because otherwise I think people will find a way to be suspicious. But zooming out a little, I think what some non-reviewers imagine is that the allure or the potential for long-term loan of this very expensive, very fancy equipment is the siren song that you can't resist, and that you will bend over backwards to get to take that opportunity to have this stuff for free at home and listen to every day. Like, they can't imagine being neutral in the face of that opportunity. But the reality of a reviewer is that, like, I'm fighting to keep the amount of stuff down. I want to send stuff back all the time. There's too much stuff here almost always. Like, there's no allure in getting more stuff in. I can only listen to one system at a time, and there's almost always something in that system that I'm reviewing, and like, I don't want stuff piling up. And like, sure, if you own nothing, everything, 100% of your system, your reference system, and the equipment you use in addition to that to review things, like additional amplifiers or sources or whatever, if, like, all of that is on loan, yeah, that's maybe not very great either. So to quote Michael Fremer, you should have some skin in the game. And I can agree with that, because that means that stuff is even more permanent in your home. Like my speakers, not these, they're off to the side right now. I've had them for like, what, 14 years? And that means I know them way better than I would know speakers that I have on loan, even long-term loan, I think. So yeah, there's value in having some stuff that is your own, but I'm not gonna review a pair of speakers with just one amplifier. I should try it with, some maybe low power class A, some class AB, some super powerful class D, maybe some tubes. Like, that's the ideal situation to be able to see what is the environment, what is the sort of ecosystem that a certain speaker thrives in. But I'm not going to buy all of those amplifiers and own them for myself at different price tiers too. Like, I'm not going to have 12 amplifiers at home. Why would I pay for that? So you kind of, yeah, like you try to get stuff in for review to overlap. So like, I'm reviewing these very fancy speakers, but then I'm also reviewing the Mola Mola Osetra monoblocks that are sort of commensurate with them, and they share the sales director between the companies. They're often demoed together, so that makes sense, right? So you try to stagger stuff in for review that way, but you can't always make that work. So you're going to need some longer term loans to be able to bridge that in addition to the stuff that you own. But yeah, so to keep adding nuance to this, sorry if you thought this was black and white, like some people do. It just isn't. I think, yes, reviewers and publications can be more transparent about this, but I also don't think consumers should draw very big conclusions from the fact that so-and-so has more loan gear than this other person or whatever, or like, that person has had, those speakers on loan for a year and a half, what gives? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the jealousy that creeps in poisons people's judgment, I think. So like, these are tools. The stuff I loan, they're tools for me to be a better reviewer. Like, that's the point, not to hoard stuff for myself. But yeah, we could be more transparent. So let me be transparent now then. So what do I own? I own my Focal Scala Utopia first gen speakers. They were just released in the 4th generation. There was a Mark II, then there's the Evo, and now the 4th Evo M. I own my, it's behind me, MBL C51 integrated. I own the Wise DAC 202. I own the Shanling ET3 CD transport. I own the Argon Audio Solo Rune endpoint streamer. I own the Grimm MU2. I own the Dr. Fikert turntable, the tone arm and the cartridge, and I own the Manly Steelhead Phonostage. And what else? Probably more stuff. I own a bunch of cables. I do not own, let's get to the loaner part, I do not own the AudioQuest cables that I use. Those are all lent to me. And you might have seen a lot of reviewers have AudioQuest cables. That's probably because, I'm not necessarily in every case, but a lot of them have the same arrangement I have. We have long-term loans from AudioQuest. So that is a deliberate marketing strategy for AudioQuest because they get mentioned in every review, which is great for them. They get a lot of visibility out of that. And I get to have lots of different cables, more than I would ever need as a just consumer in a single system. I get to have way more cables so that I always have stuff on hand that is appropriate for whatever components I'm reviewing. And yeah, we all us reviewers that have this agreement with AudioQuest have the agreement because it helps us be better reviewers. So AudioQuest cables I don't own. They're all loaners. I also have on loan a pair of Dutch & Dutch 8C speakers in the upstairs living room. Behind here I have on shorter term loan Dutch & Dutch 6C, which is their new model. These are the private ones owned by Dutch & Dutch's sales director, who lives 10 minutes from me, but also lives half-time. He's Swedish Greek, and he's in his Greek home for a few months over the summer, and he just parked his speakers at my place in the meantime so that I could play with them, which I have not had the time to do because I have stuff to review and I haven't connected them even once, which is shameful, but that goes to show, like, yeah, it's nice that they're here and I wish I could have played with them, but I don't need more stuff coming in because I don't have the time. I can only listen to one system at a time. And again, system I'm listening to has something under review right now. It's both amplifiers and speakers. So those other speakers have to wait. Hopefully I do get to play with them. Do I have anything else on loan? So nothing else is on long-term loan. I also have, well, other stuff in for review that's coming. But that's a different category because that gets sent back as soon as the review is done. Now, are you suspicious of reviewers? Do you think we're trying to fool you? Do you think we're fooling ourselves? Can you think of things we could do or say that would ease your distrust for us? I would genuinely like to know. Like, what are the things you think are bad about this industry? Help us get better. Anyway, that's all I had for today. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, whatever, or don't. Hope you subscribe to Stereophile. Read some great reviews from great writers. Yeah, see you around. Thanks.